Ever wonder how those e-commerce brands you admire do it? How they know just the right message to send to the right people at the right time? Guess what? It's not experience. They have the right data and the right tools. They have Klaviyo. Klaviyo's data-driven marketing automation platform is sophisticated enough to power those legendary campaigns from the brands you admire, but they made it simple, easy, and fast enough for anyone to use. Klaviyo helps brands easily create personalized multi-channel marketing campaigns using your most powerful asset, your customers' data. Klaviyo integrates with all leading e-commerce platforms, helping you use your customer data in real time to send more relevant emails and SMS automations. Plus, building a marketing campaign is drag and drop easy. You can get started with your first campaign in under an hour and easily build from there with Klaviyo's best performing templates. Klaviyo gives you all the power of an enterprise marketing automation platform and none of the complexity, so you can compete with the big guys. No wonder more than 65,000 brands can't get enough. To get started with a free trial of Klaviyo, visit klaviyo.com/uncensored. That's KLAVIYO.com/uncensored.
You're listening to E-Commerce Uncensored with Kevin Mcneil and Jason Caruso.
Hey everyone, and thank you for joining us on another episode of E-Commerce Uncensored. My name is Kevin Mcneil, and I'm here with
Jason Caruso.
Before we get started, I wanted to remind everybody that we have a phone number for you guys to text us any questions that you may have or anything, comments about the podcast, anything you guys want to text us. That number is 844-643-0745. Text us anything. We'd love to hear from you. And we want to do like a whole question and answer podcast. So we'll use some of the questions that we get from that, and we'll use this into some of our content.
Yeah, and if you want to just text us like my man Al and say how much you love us, you can do that too.
Yeah, you're good friends with Al, right? At this point.
Yeah, he messages me all the time.
Yeah.
Seems like a nice guy. I feel like sometimes I can't talk as much as he'd like to, just from time constraints, but he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
Really nice guy.
And subscribe to the podcast. We got a cool interview today. We have a couple more coming up. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. And speaking of interviews, today we're interviewing Ryan Mcneil, who is kind of an interesting guy. He was in TV for a while.
In Hollywood.
And then got into TikTok and kind of blew up and went viral. And he puts out content about persuasive marketing. So it's really key to all this marketing stuff.
Yeah.
So enjoy this interview with Ryan Mcneil. Hey, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you, Kevin?
I'm good. So I've been through your TikTok. I love like the little snippets you do, little quick tips, and I'm interested to hear about some of those things. But why don't you, before we get started on that, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to like this TikTok channel that seems to have blown up?
Before he does that though, Kev, I got a bone to pick with you, Ryan.
What's that?
You're telling everybody our secrets, and you're telling everybody, what we're doing to them as marketers. I got a problem with that.
Yeah.
The stuff marketers don't want you to know.
All right.
That's right. Yeah. We'll get to that beef you have with me. My quick background though is that my professional background is I've worked in advertising. I jumped over. I started working in documentary TV on a show called Deadliest Catch. It's about crab fishermen. And then that led to a lot of other TV shows that I worked on similar to that. Eventually made my way around to marketing. And it's interesting as I kind of look back on this seemingly disjointed career path. I think the thing that ties it together is just this fascination with people and how they tick. What motivates people, what drives them, which kind of brought about my the idea for this TikTok account that I have called Invisible Influence.
So, what's interesting is that everything is going towards video, right? Like VSLs, everybody's like wants the VSL, and you said you wanted to talk to us about TikTok later, but I want to talk to you about video because that is one thing that we just have not found someone that can do good video. Like and if they do, they're like working with the Russell Brunsons of the world. They want $1 million for a video, or like a funny sales video costs $50,000. And I don't know, like that I want to go there, but I think those two kind of are coming together now, right? Like video is becoming now like the new sales letter. And what's interesting is before we got on, we talked about copywriting, and you're big into psychology, like the psychology of why things are happening or why people are buying. And which is pretty interesting, because most of these copywriting books that I'm reading, they all basically say the same thing. It's like, you're not trying to convince people to buy something they don't want. You're just trying to be the person that they buy from. They buy the products that they do want. Right. And that was like a brain FUCK for me.
Sure.
Because I always felt like persuasion copy was like making people do things they don't want to do. And then I started reading these books. Like, no, that's not it. You're just making people want your product. Like,
right.
So.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting because you talk a lot about this kind of stuff on your channel. And that's basically what the point was, is that you talk about how people are using different triggers, emotional triggers, how they're doing these kind of things to make you buy their stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of the pitch of the whole channel, is that as a advertiser, marketer background, I'm showing consumers basically, here are the secrets that marketers are using to kind of use your own psychology against you. So like you said, these are not new ideas. I think, like, we've been reading the same stuff in a bunch of these marketing psychology books for a long time, but it is crazy how few people really understand what's going on, pulling back the curtain as to why they feel motivated. It's funny too, because as a person aware of these tricks, they still work on me too. I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but like I find myself falling for some of the same marketing tricks that I'm calling out on my TikTok channel.
Because they're not really tricks. Like if I want to buy a boat, right, and you're just telling me what this boat is going to do for me, and you're just wetting my whistle, so to speak, you're not really tricking me into doing anything. Now, you are tricking me, not tricking me, but you are using tactics to get me to do things. Like I will, submit that, but you're not really forcing me to do something that I don't want to do already.
That's fair. I think it kind of comes down to that conversation of the difference between persuasion and manipulation, that really what we're doing is more of persuasion as marketers than manipulation. I'm sure there are some of those people out there who are still trying to work the manipulation levers, but I do think it's less effective. But yeah, just being a strong persuader is really, I think, what we're trying to do at the end of the day as marketers.
Right.
It's crazy once you start learning it and you get into this world, and even as the videos I watched on your TikTok, you start noticing them everywhere. Every single thing you see, from going into a store, going into a restaurant, watching TV, the ads that come across you on YouTube, all those things, it happens everywhere. And like Jason said, is like, it's all the same. It's like you just see it in different places in different ways.
Yeah, it's the transformation, right? Like from where you are today to where you're going to be after you buy whatever it is you're buying. So when you walk into a store and you see this gorgeous mannequin all set up, like she's like looking, dressed to the nines, you put yourself in that mannequin's place. You're like, oh shit, I would look really good in that too. So to me, like, I don't feel like that's forcing anybody to do. I do think that that's subconsciously doing shit, but it's not really forcing.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's not really forcing people to do anything against their will. But it is crazy. Like you said, you see these things all the time. It's kind of like, as one who worked in the kind of Hollywood system, you start to understand that every movie is the same formula, just repeated over and over again. It's just when you start to like peel back that curtain and see like how not unique everything is, that everything is just formulaic. It's just a matter of learning those formulas and triggers that work.
Yeah, and that's like a Donald Miller thing, right? He actually kind of decoded Hollywood. He basically said, look, I don't care what movie you're watching. there is like this good guy or reluctant hero, and then there's like this bad force. And he's like, it's just how our brains work. We're just into this like good and evil like fight.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it is funny that I'm not to the point that I'm just like a total cynic when it comes to movies and stuff, but you know, when it does take a little bit of the joy out of the movie going experience when you know, like, okay, this thing is probably about to happen in any kind of like Hollywood blockbuster movie. The formula is somewhat predictable, as Donald Miller calls out. And I really do enjoy the way that he relates some of those storytelling techniques over to marketing. I think he's done a really interesting job with what he's selling there with the story brand stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you got something, Kev?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna just say, and he says, like, and he's right. He's like, the movies that don't do as well usually don't do a good job of this force interaction, like this good versus evil. He's like, if you ever notice like a movie that you just can't get into, it's usually that they're just not telling the story with enough like bad forces coming into, you know, so it's interesting.
Absolutely. Jason, can I dive into one thing that you said that you were having so much trouble with video? I'm curious the type of video you're trying to do, because I think there is something interesting today, and it kind of relates back to the TikTok thing, but this whole idea of how platforms like TikTok have kind of democratized video in a way, this user generated content look. I think there's something really interesting with that I don't know what types of video that you're after, but I do think that there's that's kind of part of the magic of TikTok for me, is that it can look like shit, and there's something that feels very real and authentic about that. So yeah, I'd be curious to hear what type of video you're trying to make that is seemingly so impossible to find.
I don't want to say that it's impossible, but like understand it. Like, okay, so what you're doing on TikTok, first of all, how many followers do you have on there, or likes?
I think my follower count is somewhere in the 238,000 range.
Yeah. So I think that like there is a segment of people that like that real part of it, right? And you can get to know someone that way really well. But when you're trying to create like a video sales letter on a landing page, like I mean, some of these, like, you know, these Harmon brother videos, and like these you know, we had Joseph, what's the last name, Kevin? Wilkinson from Funny Sales Videos. And they clearly understand how to create a video that either goes viral or that sells, right? And that's the one I'm talking about, like that VSL style. You know, like we're starting this new golf brand, like this golf product, because I'm like a former PGA professional, teaching professional, and like I want to use that as like my passion. And like I don't feel like if I go outside and shoot like a VSL from like just like, you know, a selfie, like it's not gonna have the same impact if I kind of create this longer form. So that's kind of what I mean. And the editing, like knowing what to pop up at what time, when to use B-roll, when not to use B-roll, that kind of stuff, to me, it's just like, oh shit, I'm this is like too much.
I think it feels like a huge investment in time and in money when you think about a video sales letter like that. And then in our mind, it's like you don't even know if it's going to do anything. Really?
Right.
So it's to Bruce to do this whole production and spend a bunch of money and a bunch of time to put it together, and then it just like falls flat. It's kind of like a barrier, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, some of those guys that you mentioned are kind of wizards with knowing how to do this stuff. It's funny because when I was working in LA and pursuing directing, the number of the clients that would come to us, and everyone just wanted something viral. That was just kind of like the understood thing. Like if you're going to spend the money, you obviously want it to reach as many people as possible. So yeah, figuring out those exact things that make something viral, it is like a special sort of magic. The people who've been able to been able to replicate that over and over again, that is a gift. I think there are definitely certain things, especially like, relating back to TikTok, there are certainly little triggers that I know work as hooks for those types of short form videos. But yeah, that video sales letter style video, that is an art unto its own.
Yeah, and we'll get into exactly what you're doing specifically. But I always like, so I ever since I've gotten into this like copywriting world and understanding like this good versus evil and this like, I do pay attention to like how that all plays out in movies now, just because I want to learn, But I think what fascinates me the most is when you watch a movie, the way that it's filmed makes you feel like it's linear. But when you watch it, there are so many different angles of cameras that you don't even like realize are happening. So like I was watching a movie yesterday called Nobody, which is like a Equalizer / John Wick type movie, almost identical. And just like how they set the camera up like low with like an object, maybe like a table in between the person and then the face that they're showing. It's like, you don't think about that while you're watching it, but when you're trying to notice that shit, it's so interesting that like how they've made you feel a certain way when you're watching it, right? Just by the camera angle. Like I said, like before I started thinking about this, you almost just think of it as like this. It's like linear. It's just like one picture the whole time, but it's not. It's like literally cutting every like 2 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, I think the really gifted Hollywood directors, I think Spielberg is one of those masters of this, just kind of like knowing exactly what visual clue to sort of present on screen to kind of pull the story along. And some people don't have that gift, and it makes for a really kind of broken or more confusing story. But yeah, those people who can reveal the right visual at the right time that sort of tells you what's about to happen, but doesn't reveal too much. Yeah, it's a real art.
Yeah, it really is, and it's that part of it. It's funny. I heard something the other day, and I'm in this copywriting world all of a sudden. Like recently, it's not really my thing. I was mainly like Facebook ads, email marketing, that kind of stuff. But this fascinates me, like being able to persuade people with words. Like that's just so crazy to me. But I heard someone say, everybody, like this is the guy speaking. He says, everybody thinks that you should work on your weaknesses. He said, but really you should just be doing your strengths and let someone else do the things that you're weak in. So don't try to learn them just to try to save money or that kind of thing, because it's like, it's just wasting time on something that someone else who really knows what they're doing could be doing. And you could be doing something that you're really good at. It's just interesting. It's like, I'm like, should I be really working on copywriting right now?
Yeah, that's funny. I just read an article about how, you derive a lot more happiness if you outsource those parts of your life that you just find to be extremely tedious too. So it's, I don't know if it's a New Year's resolution for me to, hire out more lawn care and house cleaning, but that's what kind of jumped to mind. Maybe I could be a happier individual if I outsource more of these things that aren't necessarily the best use of my time.
Well, there's an opportunity cost, right?
Sure.
And Russell Brunson talks about it all the time. He's like, yeah, I can go outside and cut my grass. He's like, but what does it cost me? $100? Like I could be making $1,000. Like even if I have the time to do it, I don't want to do it because I can. There's an opportunity cost to that. So
yeah, totally.
Really, really interesting. So enough of the bullshit. Why don't we talk about what exactly triggered you to do this? Why did you do this? And what exactly are you doing? I know we spoke about it a little bit, but what was the premise of this?
When you talk about your background, you don't appear to me to be a TikTok influencer. So how did what led you to this, and how did you end up with 230,000 TikTok followers?
I mean, honestly, this was kind of a product of the pandemic because I started this channel. I think it's been a little less than a year. I think February of last year is when, I don't know when this will air, but it was about a year ago that I kicked this thing off. I had been a consumer of TikTok just kind of casually. I don't know if obviously one of you guys must use it to have seen my account, but for those who haven't used it, it's a pretty addictive little app. I think in the early days, it was mostly just kind of dancing and lip syncing teenagers. So I think there was a real reluctance for older folks with, anything serious to say to get on there. But what had happened was, it was, like I said, middle of the pandemic. I was feeling pretty cooped up and also just creatively a little stifled. And what happened was I was also reading this book called Share Your Work by Austin Kleon. I don't know if you guys know this book. It's a great little coffee table book by a graphic designer who super easy read. But the kind of premise behind this book is that if you just kind of share what you're doing, your process on things on the internet, magical things could happen. You never know. I mean, do it not just for what could happen or, extrinsically, but it's just a good practice to always be kind of putting yourself out there, making yourself a little more vulnerable. And so for me, as a video guy, I've always turned the camera around on other people. I've never been like the star of the show. That was never really my interest. But having read this book, I was like, I'm relatively new to this marketing industry. Although I've had a long interest in this kind of marketing psychology stuff. I mean, that goes back to, I think, in high school, reading this book called Coercion by Douglas Rushkoff. So I've always been fascinated by that stuff. So I was like, you know what? As I kind of learn new tricks about this kind of marketing psychology stuff, I'm almost going to use TikTok as a way of like bookmarking ideas that I don't want to forget, So, and that kind of continues to this day. It's almost like this is my way of, if I hear like a really fascinating idea on a podcast, if I come across something on a blog, this is a way for me to kind of just put it out there as a tool for me to remember. I find it interesting, and apparently some other people find it interesting as well. And so that's kind of the genesis of this TikTok thing, I think.
Yeah. So I was in Ray Edwards. I just did a 5-day challenge with Ray for the how to write copy that sells.
Uh-huh.
And he said something pretty interesting about TikTok that I didn't think about, but he said, the one thing about TikTok and why I think it's the biggest, meaning him, why I think this is the biggest opportunity is, unlike Facebook, unlike Instagram, unlike Twitter, TikTok just shows videos that people like and share. So like, it doesn't matter how many people are following you. None of that matters. Like, your videos can go viral if you have one person following you, if other people are liking it.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because, it's not really like that on Facebook. It's not like that on Twitter. It's not like that on Instagram, right? Like, you really need followers, people to see your shit, So that was like a really interesting thing for him to say. So
yeah, I mean, they really stumbled on something clever with that TikTok algorithm that made it, it sort of democratized the whole content creation idea, because someone's pointed out that like people who are trying to grow on Instagram, I think it's plateaued. I mean, I don't often find myself following new people on Instagram, maybe more because they've kind of changed their algorithm to kind of present more people in front of you who you're not following. But it totally worked for me. I mean, I went from just having no followers to, I mean, literally in a week, I think is when I had one massive video that got me like 150,000 followers. So it was just like a crazy moment that felt like my phone was going to blow up.
What was that video about?
yeah.
That video, which I do kind of, it's basically a background video about who I am, what this channel is about, and kind of a call to action to follow me if you're interested in learning this stuff. I was really fascinated by, I probably put more thought into kind of like the psychological triggers of TikTok video. I put more thought into that video than probably any other that I've done. in terms of making sure it had a really enticing hook at the beginning. Quick cuts seemed to work pretty well for me. There were just a number of things I did in that video that I thought I had like a pretty strong hunch that it would do something. I kind of told my wife like, hey, I'm going to watch this video pretty closely. I had no clue that it would do what it did. I think it's got over 1 million views now, but if anyone goes to my channel, I have it pinned at the top. It's called my biggest professional regret.
I think that's, so I just want to say two things. So number one, I think that one of the things that's probably helped is that you're doing something different. People don't like marketers. People look at us like salesmen. So like, you're kind of like going against that fray, so to speak. And I think people kind of latch onto that, which is cool. But going back to what you said about you wanted to kind of like document what you were doing, so to speak, and like have a place. Gary Vaynerchuk talks a lot about that. And I'm not like a big Gary V guy. He's a little bit too like, for me personally, I'm not a bad guy. You can obviously clearly know he's just a little bit too like huffy puffy kind of like for me,
Sure.
Like he knows everything. He knows the future, all this other shit. Like anyway, but you could tell he's a good guy.
Yeah.
But he says like, don't create. He says, document. He's like, if you create, it's very hard to stay with it, like to continue just creating shit. He goes, it takes a lot of time to think about. It takes a lot of time. He's like, but if you're just documenting what you're doing anyway, he said, it's just much easier because now you're just doing what you're doing anyway. And you're not really trying to create something. You're just saying like, hey, look, this is what I'm doing. So I think like, that's a really interesting concept, right? Don't create, like, don't like document, don't create. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Easier for him when he has like a whole film crew following him around every day. But I will say that when you start getting into switching into kind of content creator mindset versus just consumer of content, it really is such a different perspective on my day, at least. I mean, now my brain's constantly going to like, oh, that's a piece of content. Like, whereas before I was never like seeking out these opportunities. Now that I have been kind of creating content, I see opportunities of things to share all the time that I was just kind of blind to before. Kind of my matrix moment, I guess, of content creator matrix.
That's always been really difficult for us. We always said that. We always say these things on the podcast, and we have all this content. Like, and we had a marketing agent. Well, we have a marketing agency, and if we just like looked at the things that we were doing every day and just like documented everything we did, there's so much content. And I think people don't recognize that. It's just really hard. We have a really hard time. Like, okay, stop what we're doing. Let's record my screen of what I'm doing and try to walk people through this little tutorial. Did you have a hard time with that when you first started, or was it just kind of second nature to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think what has been a hindrance to me is that with a video background, I still struggle with I'm going to shoot this crudely on my iPhone kind of thing. Like I sort of want everything to look a little too beautiful, which kind of probably is not the best for me on TikTok. Because sometimes when things look too nice, kind of our bullshit alarms go off that this reads like an ad. But no, I don't know. I found a way to kind of work it into my day to day. I think one of the biggest things for me now is I have just a note taking app. I use one called Trello. I don't know if you guys know this app, but I just keep a super long list of ideas that I want to get to at some point. It's absurdly long at this point. So I definitely have more ideas than I have time to create, but I don't want to lose that idea if it hits me. I just want to document it really quickly on my phone.
Let's go into some of your content too. Like, and actually, because our audience is our business owners, e-commerce store owners, marketers. What are some of their persuasive techniques that you focus on some of your videos?
I think basically what I'm doing is I'm just rehashing this book by Robert Cialdini over and over again on my channel. I don't know if you guys know this book called Persuasion by Robert Cialdini is how you say his name.
I feel like I read that book.
I'm sorry. Persuasion was the other one. Influence. He wrote
Yes,
also one
that's
called
what it is.
Persuasion was Robert Cialdini, but Influence is the one that
Influence.
really was like the big first one that was kind of a light bulb moment for me. And he's a college professor, former college professor, who really kind of did a deep dive into the field of what influences people, what persuades people to take action. And so he kind of has broken it down. He actually just re-released this book. It's an old book, but he kind of gets into a number of the different triggers that people use.
Yeah, I read it.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to see, but I read it, and oh shit, it moved. But I couldn't. I had a hard time listening to it. It was just like I couldn't get through the listening of the freaking reader. I don't know. It's like I didn't finish it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe give it a chance with the audiobook. I don't know. Maybe you did, but I was just pulling them up to remember, but his original ones he talked about were 6 triggers, being reciprocity, commitment. Once we commit to something, we stick to it. Authority, how we will listen to authority figures. Social proof. I'm sure you guys are very familiar with how to use that well. Scarcity, when we think that something is scarce, how we desire it more. And then just how liking, causes us to, when we like someone, we want to do business with them or work with them. So, again, these aren't necessarily groundbreaking ideas. I think some of them feel almost like common sense, but it is interesting how he's kind of worked in the academia, just kind of studying how effective these things really are. He just added a new one too in the updated version. I'm blanking on what it was, but yeah, it is interesting how these triggers get used over and over in a lot of the marketing efforts. And like you said, yeah, my channel is much more of like a consumer beware angle. Although I think I have a mix of, I certainly have a lot of marketers and small business owners kind of reaching out to me too, thinking like, even though I'm telling people, hey, look out, these things are being used on you. I think there's a lot of interest too. And like, well, if these are so effective, maybe there's a way I can use these myself for my own marketing.
Ever wonder how those e-commerce brands you admire do it? How they know just the right message to send to the right people at the right time? Guess what? It's not experience. They have the right data and the right tools. They have Klaviyo. Klaviyo's data-driven marketing automation platform is sophisticated enough to power those legendary campaigns from the brands you admire, but they made it simple, easy, and fast enough for anyone to use. Klaviyo helps brands easily create personalized multi-channel marketing campaigns using your most powerful asset, your customers' data. Klaviyo integrates with all leading e-commerce platforms, helping you use your customer data in real time to send more relevant emails and SMS automations. Plus, building a marketing campaign is drag and drop easy. You can get started with your first campaign in under an hour and easily build from there with Klaviyo's best performing templates. Klaviyo gives you all the power of an enterprise marketing automation platform and none of the complexity, so you can compete with the big guys. No wonder more than 65,000 brands can't get enough. To get started with a free trial of Klaviyo, visit klaviyo.com/uncensored. That's klaviyo.com/uncensored.
So what's interesting to me is that, not interesting, but people don't realize this, is that, you read the book. So in your mind, right, everybody read the book. And the truth is like, you can literally create a business out of what you're doing. Just grab a book that you've read and teach the value in the book in your way. And, chances are people are going to want to hear about it because they haven't read the book, and most people are lazy. They're probably not going to read the book. So you can basically do what you're doing and say, look, I read these 10 books. I'm going to give you the Cliff Note version of it. And if you do it in your own voice, you may not have to say that, but because people don't own these concepts. They're just basically, telling you, like, you're bringing them to light, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, you can create an entire business just on teaching people shit from somebody else's book.
Yeah, it's funny. I can't remember if we had pushed record yet, but we were kind of talking about how a lot of these copywriting books are just kind of the same information, just retold in a new way. It's kind of like what you're saying. It's almost like you can take some of these universal concepts and you just put a new wrapper around it and put your own unique spin on it. And there you go. You got your own business. Right. So, or in my case, a TikTok channel. So
are you monetizing yet?
That's the tricky thing with TikTok. I have not yet cracked that nut. I will say, first off, for anyone who's interested in content creation, thinking they're going to get rich off of TikTok, I'm here to burst your bubble right now. That whereas I think one can do quite well with a follower account on YouTube, TikTok pays the pay is pretty meager. So don't get into TikTok for what that creator fund might have to offer, because I mean, sure, it might. I think in total this last month, even with multiple videos, getting 10, 20,000, I think made like $2 this last month. It's crazy how little TikTok pays. But there is still a great opportunity for pushing people off platform. There have been brand opportunities that have come up to do kind of sponsored post stuff. So that's always fun and interesting. It's also kind of an interesting conflict of interest when you're telling consumers, hey, look out for marketing bullshit. And then all of a sudden, like, how do you organically then weave in some marketing bullshit into your feed? So I don't want to, for me, the payday that would come with that hasn't been worth risking, the potential, feedback from my audience, feeling like I somehow betrayed my their trust.
Well, I liken it to the podcast, right? So this podcast, we don't really get rich on the sponsors that we have. And but Kevin and I have made a lot of money with what the businesses that we have outside of the podcast. So we have this business with a wildlife photographer. It's a 7-figure business, and we met him through the podcast. Our biggest client, who they pay us a lot of money every month, they came through the podcast. So we don't really make our money from this podcast, but we make our money from this podcast.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So no, that's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's opportunity there. I sometimes kick myself that I waited till I had kids to really dive into being a content creator. There's a million things I want to do now. I think, like we talked about, there's potential for a course here for either marketers or small business owners who want to use some of these tactics. And I'm kind of in the sort of customer research phase a little bit to better understand what needs are out there. If anyone goes to my account, it's invisible_influence, just to make it a little more confusing. But in my bio, I've kind of created a link where I want to kind of do these one-on-ones with people, both to kind of understand what questions people have about marketing, to better create content for my channel, but also to see, is there potential for a course out there or something else to be done with this? So I'm trying to better understand kind of what roadblocks people are facing right now.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you're obviously building a targeted audience here, but especially when it happens so fast, it's hard to really understand who those people are, especially on these social media channels. You're like, who the hell is liking this? Who's sharing it? Same with our podcast. Like, we get a good amount of downloads every month, but we really don't know who they are on the other side. So you got to try to just gather. I think you're doing a good thing by having a form where that they can fill out and ask questions and stuff like that. That's a good way to kind of see who your followers are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because just relying on the demographics TikTok gives you, I can know, I skew 52% male and that they're mostly from the United States, but they're very surface level demographics. So yeah, I would love to know who my audience is, to be honest. So it's cool when I get contacted by people like you guys, like, okay, I'm glad to hear that I'm reaching other marketers, because that is an audience I would like to be reaching.
Yeah, I mean, you can, even though you're kind of going against sort of like the fray, so to speak, I think you can twist it a little bit and say, look, guys, like, I'm not making this shit up. Like, these are facts. So I'm just telling you what the facts are. I'm not necessarily, so like, look, I know how to use these facts to sell your products. I'm just making you aware of them. But basically all you're doing is creating, you're creating trust with people. And so it happened for you pretty quickly. But I think what's going to happen is the longer you do it, the more people will see your face, and sort of like, we get a lot of people that are like, look, I've been listening for 2 years or 3 years and I just reached out. And I'm like, what the fuck took you so long? And,
right.
And they're like, well, I just didn't have the need 2 years ago. Right. So like, there's a lot of like things like timing. We've talked about this on our podcast a lot. Like, timing is the number one factor. I don't care how good your sales letter is. I don't care how good your video is. I don't care how good any of that shit is. If someone doesn't need what you're selling, it's not going to work.
Right.
So
yeah,
everything is timing. So just staying in front of people, one of our biggest clients, she was listening to us for what, Kev, like a year or maybe like something like that before she reached out to us. She reached out to us. We've been working with her for 3 years now. Right. So like, that repetition, that consistency. I see guys all the time coming up on my IG. I have no idea who these guys are. I never watch their videos. I never read about them. But you know what? I see them almost every day, and you almost just start trusting them, even if you don't listen to anything they're saying.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I I was watching some of your old content, and you recently had on this Ezra guy.
Firestone, yeah.
Yeah. And I've seen Facebook ads from this guy, and it's funny just that I'm pretty sure he's run Facebook ads, right? This guy.
Oh yeah,
It's funny that just my having seen him previously and then I saw him again, like I didn't immediately clue into where I'd seen him, but there was instant, authority built up in my head. Like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about, because, he would not be a recognizable face to me if I didn't, trust, what he was saying or something. So
yeah. Sorry, I'm going to cut you off, but Ryan, but think about what you just said.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that is a fact, right?
Yep.
Like, I don't care if you decode it and tell me that I'm using that against you. You can't change the fact that worked.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So to me, you're pointing out things to people that are just facts. I mean, you can say like, this is how they're persuading you, but they can't do anything about it. Like, you're telling people how this is working, and it worked on you.
Yeah, go do it. Go do the things I'm telling you to do.
Right. Yeah, right. Exactly. No, it is so fascinating to me. And like I said, I fall for these things all the time. Some people just use them more delicately than others. The ones who are really good at it, you don't feel like you're being, manipulated or persuaded. It's the really good ones are the ones who are very sly about it. Because I certainly see, not to ruffle any ClickFunnels feathers, but there's certain ClickFunnels type websites that I see that feel so heavy-handed in what's going on that, again, maybe that's just me, that I have like more of like some more red flags go up about
sensitive.
Yeah. But some of the tactics used on some of these websites just feel a little over the top to me. So I seem to respond to ones who use it a little more on the sly.
But wait, this is something that I don't remember which book it's in. Okay. But this is actually an important part of copywriting that is, forgot who it was. It may have been Alex Hormozy in here. Somebody, they said like, the idea is not to attract people that aren't like you. It's to attract people who are like you. So those people who are being the way that they're being, they're attracting those people. You're not a high pressure kind of guy, so you're just not attracted to it.
Sure.
But it doesn't mean that there isn't a segment of people that are.
That's fair. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's really interesting.
Yeah, no, that is interesting.
Right? You're trying to attract people like you, not that are not like you, because they're never going to buy from you. People that are like you, that see themselves in you, that talk like you, that act like you, that's who you're trying to. Kevin and I, if we both started a business, we would attract two different people, right? Kevin's very laid back. There's not much that kind of bothers. Heart beats once a month. And I'm like the opposite, right? Like I'm a salesy guy.
Annoying, over the top, bullshitter, that kind of guy.
Right. And you ask you a question, you get back to me 4 weeks later, it's like, you push me, I'm coming. But anyway,
I think I would respond better to Kevin's marketing just based on that.
Absolutely. But that's not wrong. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Like I want to attract people who think like me, who act like me. I'm not the only one in the world that acts like this, who's abrasive and brash. I mean, there are tons of people like that. That's who I'm going to attract when I create a business. Kevin's going to attract more laid back people like you, or maybe people that don't talk as much like him, whatever. But the point is I'm not trying to attract you, right? Like you are not my guy.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not your guy, but Kevin is.
Well, I think people get caught up in thinking that they need to reach everyone, instead of just finding exactly who they need to speak to. And then they end up speaking to no one, really.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I just made a video about that. I think that's so true. And two, I feel like that's one of those bedrock foundational ideas of marketing. Is just, I am not my consumer. Jason, you said I may want to attract people like me, but in a lot of the work I do, it just kind of, it's such a false idea to think like, okay, because I would do this thing, everyone else would do that thing. It's kind of what you said. It's just,
but it's you as a person. It's not what you do. Like, doesn't mean you guys are going to have the same, the same tactics or this, but you're going to be attracted to people. People that are like you are going to be attracted to you. People that are like Kevin are going to be attracted to Kevin, right? Like, dude, there's a whole segment of marketers that don't want to sound like a used car salesman, like I may sound when I sell, right?
Sure,
but there are millions of used car salesmen that make a lot of money.
That's true too. Yeah.
So,
no, it's a great point. It's really like one of these reasons I love talking in these one-on-one sessions that I've been doing through my TikTok. Is one, I enjoy interviewing people. It's kind of what my background is with the TV stuff was interviewing people and hearing them tell their story in their own words, but getting people just keying into even some of the phrases that people use and all that. I find that again, it kind of ties back to this fascination with consumer psychology, I guess, but I just love hearing how people talk about their own purchasing decisions, the emotions behind them. That stuff is just endlessly fascinating to me. And I think so helpful in determining what type of product is really going to work for them.
Yeah, they buy with emotion and they justify it with logic.
That's right.
That to me is like just a crazy thing to think about. Like I buy something on emotion. It's so true. Like I want something like emotionally, but then like I got to go through like, okay, if I spend this and I don't spend that and I spend it, like let me give you an example. I just bought golf clubs. Okay. They were $1,200.
You bought golf clubs?
I did. They were supposed to be here yesterday and they weren't. And so I'm friggin' annoyed. I hope they come today. Freaking FedEx just says delayed. But so I bought golf clubs. They were $1,200. $1,200, if I pay for it right now, would not change my life. Right. However, I still buy like that. Right. So I'm like, okay, $1,200. But if I sell my old driver, I'll get $300 for that on eBay. If I sell another $100, if I sell another, my 3-wood, I can get another $100 for that. Okay, so now my $1,200 golf clubs, they just went down to $600. Now I got my old golf clubs, and maybe I can get $300 on eBay. Oh shit, I only paid $300 for these brand new clubs. But that's what you do, right? Like I want the clubs, and then I want to logically reinforce my purchase.
Yeah,
And
right,
that's,
right.
That's kind of like what I did.
It's really interesting listening to your logic when you go to buy these big purchases. I love it. You're like, well, in the end, I only spent $100 because I sold all this stuff on eBay. But once upon a time, you bought that thing originally, so it's still money out of your pocket.
Yeah, but it's
Jason,
money.
what was the original trigger that said I need $1,200 golf clubs like these? What was it?
So I am a golf fanatic, right? It'd almost be like me saying to you, why do you need a Canon Mark V?
Okay.
Like, you'd be like,
it's just known in
just
the
like,
golfing world, like this is the one to have.
My clubs are from 2014.
Okay.
So I'm a pretty good golfer, and changing golf clubs is like impossible for somebody who is used to the feel and the weight and the swing weight and all this other stuff. So like I bought 3 sets of golf clubs before this one, and I've returned them all because I'm like, they just don't feel right. I'm hitting the ball. They're just not getting the feedback that I want.
Right.
So it's very difficult for me to change my clubs, but I am going to be 45 years old next month, and I'm just losing the speed I once had, right? Like I'm just not swinging it as hard. The clubs that I have are just a little bit heavy. So, and $1,200 for golf clubs is actually cheap. They really go up to like 2,000, or 2,500. But the ones I got,
sounds like you're justifying with logic again. You're justifying this. Yeah.
No, actually,
really a great deal.
I just bought my house, and everything in this friggin' house has been for my wife. So this is
the one thing for you.
Exactly. Right.
I like it.
Yeah. So anyway,
we all need that.
But it's so true.
Sure.
You buy with emotion.
Oh, yeah.
Like shit. I'm getting my I'm slowing down my swing. I need to. Now I'm playing with all these guys in South Carolina. They're all beating me. I'm usually the best golfer I can't beat these guys. So it's driving me crazy. Yeah. So anyway, it's exactly how it worked. I emotionally wanted these clubs because it's going to make me play better golf, at least I think it will.
Yep.
And then I got to like justify it logically.
There's I throw in a handful of kind of sports psychology things on my channel too, and one of those was a study out of Nike, or at least they used Nike as an example of people who believed that sports equipment was going to make them better. It actually had this kind of placebo effect, and people actually did perform better just because they were using Nike products. So yeah, you could take the same 2 products, tell one group, hey, this is a Nike thing. It does this, and this. And then the other group, not knowing all of this like backstory about how awesome it's supposed to be, that group who's been told how amazing they're going to perform with the product outperforms.
Well, here's a perfect example in your world.
Yeah.
A guy with a Canon Mark V can, if he knows what he's doing, can probably do just as good of a job as with like a Nikon D3.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Or no, a D, what is it? A D5 something. Anyway, a cheaper Nikon camera. Right. Like a really good videographer, he knows it's the glass, right? He knows I could throw, some nice glass on the Mark V, and I could throw some nice glass on the Nikon D, whatever. Like the cheaper Ds, right? There's some good ones, but like the cheaper one, right? They know that it's going to kind of look the same, right? Like it's kind of like that. Like golf equipment's kind of like the same thing. It's like, I'm a good golfer. I kind of can pick anything up and be good, but I want to like optimize. And
sure. Yeah.
And that's where the clubs come in. So
I love it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. It's all good.
I got one question.
Hit me.
Ryan, I know I keep talking, but I was like, this, Kev, I know this was like a heavy me conversation here. And it's mainly because like this copywriting world is like what I've been studying. So like, I'm so fascinated. Usually I let Kevin talk a little bit more, but anyway,
it's hard
Ryan,
to jump in.
We've been, what's interesting about your story, and I think it's like the story with a lot of people. When you go into something trying to be famous or trying to get viral or trying whatever, it often doesn't happen. But like, I get the sense from you, if I said to you like, hey, how do we replicate this? You'd be like, yeah, get a viral video and hopefully get 150,000 people to like you. But what are like some tips would you say for people on TikTok? Because you got momentum. And I think that's what it comes down to, is like finding a way to get momentum. And then, so what are like some tips you would say for me? Let's say I want to get on TikTok and I want to do something like, what would you say? Like, I know for me, like I get caught up in the equipment, like everything has to
Mhm.
be perfect. So what would you say some tips are?
Um, yeah, first I would encourage people to even attempt it because for all the things you said before about how much easier it is to find an audience on this platform versus the other ones is so true. Um, this kind of goes to this concept of just uh, I there's a video from Ira Glass who of This American Life. He talks about this idea that whenever you get into anything new, any kind of creative venture, you're gonna suck at it in the beginning. And you know, even though I have a background in video, I look back at the very first videos I shot. I'm like, oh man, I cringe at how I sounded, how stiff I looked. Um, and so it is interesting that it's going to take time to get there. So you have to kind of get over that hump of your initial insecurities about putting yourself out there. And then two, again, this is kind of more on the sort of human psychology. A lot of the roadblocks that I hear people encounter when they're not posting content is just this idea of there's a concept called the spotlight effect, that everyone's like judging you, that everyone's kind of looking at your, poor equipment or, your whatever it is and judging you silently for it. And really the secret is that everyone feels insecure and feels like everyone's judging them. So really no one is judging you as harshly as you imagine they are. So if you're past that, I would say with TikTok, I would ignore the advice of people who, and there's a lot of them on TikTok, who say like, you need to be posting 2 or 3 times a day. Sure. I mean, there's something to like throwing a lot of shit out there and like law of averages, you're going to have a better chance of something hitting. But I've kind of gone with this like quality over quantity thing myself, that I'm not going to just like throw a garbage video out there. I feel like that is just going to burn my audience. If they see too much garbage content from me over and over again, then they're going to lose interest. I would much rather get the comments, or it happens on my feed all the time that I will see. It happened this morning that I'll see that someone just engaged with my content for like 45 minutes straight, liking video after video. I would much rather have like a lot of really quality videos than, throwing 3 videos out there and just hoping that something hits. But yeah, I would say like just get over that that thing that says I need better equipment. That is especially true on TikTok, where most of the content out there is shot kind of crudely. And honestly, like I've kind of mentioned, like I think in a way I might have too nice of equipment at times. I think that it can be a turnoff to like overdo your production on a platform like TikTok, where people expect things to be shot on iPhone. So, I mean, beyond just getting yourself a nice mic, which you clearly already have, I think you're golden. You just need to come up with some ideas of things to share.
Dude, what you need to do with your channel, man, as you're talking this, I'm thinking this through, right? Like you need to, and this is just my opinion, right?
Hey, throw it at me.
You should talk about a concept. Like you have concepts in each of your videos, right?
Right. Yep.
And then you should talk about how to poke those in video, because you can do that. You know how to do that. And then you can send people to your website or a link or something. And let me tell you something. I would buy it if you were like, look, this emotion is being triggered, or the marketers are using this to trigger your emotion. If you'd like to know how to do that, click this link. And I have this PDF, get people on your email list, and boom, you're on your way.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, to me, what we've always heard and what we've realized is like with stuff like with being a creator, it takes time to find your voice, right? Like it takes time to figure out really how you're going to deliver your message the most optimal way, right? And you're going through that now. I mean, you're still new at this, right? So you're still trying to figure out like what's working and what's not working. But to me, like, I think video is what is like the opposite, but the same as like taboo. It's like such a concept that people just can't wrap their heads around.
Right.
And I think that like guys like me as marketers, like I would love to know like how Hollywood takes this concept and like sucks you in. And I can show you how to do that here. Just click this link. Dude, I'd be on that list instantly.
You give me ideas here, man. I love it. Yeah.
One last idea. Sorry, did you have something to say?
No, go for it.
Okay. One last idea is, what was that guy's name? Social Triggers. Have you ever read that blog?
Sounds vaguely familiar. Social Triggers.
Derek Halpern.
Okay.
Kind of got out of the blogging space, but he used to talk about this concept. He's like, look, like at first, people don't care about the production. They want the shit. Yeah. They want what you're teaching, right? He's like, I had this, like, I shot this video on like a whiteboard in my office and I made millions of dollars. And then like I hired this crew and we did it again. Nobody would buy it. He's like, so I went right back to the old shit, right? Like when people just want the stuff. They don't want it to be too elaborate and like it's taking you too long to get to the concept. They just want to know how to do the thing. Right. And that's, I think, what you're saying is like, get over that. Like everything has to be perfect. They just want the information.
Right. Totally.
Coming from a videographer.
It's almost that idea of like getting like a minimal viable product out there. Just get something out there and see what works. I think that's another great thing with TikTok is the opportunity to just throw a lot of different types of concepts out and see what resonates with your audience and just kind of lean into that. So
just start doing it. I mean, so many times, like I'll sit here and I'll think that I have a good idea and I'll start doing it. And 3 hours later, I don't have anything because I just keep recording it, redoing it over and over again.
Right. And this is the funny thing. I started like a blog like 15 years ago. And it's like, it's such a crazy concept to think about, but it's so true. It's like when you just start a blog or anything now, and now it's all social, but when you start these things, you think that everybody's going to see your stuff and nobody does. And you really care about it. And then when you get big, you don't care about it anymore. And everybody is seeing your stuff. Right. So like in the beginning, nobody sees your shit and you put so much time into it. And then later when you have millions of followers, like you don't put as much time into it and everybody does see it. It's just a crazy concept to think about, you know?
Absolutely.
So anyway.
All right. You guys got to go check out Ryan's TikTok at invisible_influence. A lot of cool quick little snippets and tips and tactics. It's really cool. Really interesting things to think about. I got really into it. So go check it out. Follow him. Do what you got to do. Thank you so much for joining us, Ryan.
Absolutely. Thank you
Definitely
guys.
Stay in touch. AJ, that was a cool interview. Good guy. I look forward to keeping in touch with him. He's got some good strategies.
Really, really nice guy. I definitely feel like I was talking a lot in this one because I'm so interested in this.
You could tell your passion behind this persuasive marketing and the copywriting.
Dude, it is just so mind-blowing to me how you can write words on a page that persuade people to buy your product. It's just, to me, I can't figure out something other than golf that is more to me is like just crazy to think about.
Yeah, the tricks are so interesting too. And with him,
psychological,
it's like psychological tricks, like even with the videos, like just how they're shot. Like I think we talked about it, how they're shot and the angles, how they change, how they keep your attention a certain way, how you hook them in. Like it's so key. So
yeah, really cool stuff.
Anyway, again, our phone number, text us at 844-643-0745. Text us your questions, comments about the podcast, whatever. Subscribe to the podcast. Join our Facebook group, ecommerceuncensored.com/Facebook. Do all those things. Anyway, as always, you can check us out at ecommerceuncensored.com, and we'll talk to you guys real soon.
Later.
Attention e-commerce founders, entrepreneurs, side hustlers, marketers, and growth hackers. If you're working around the clock to build your dream e-commerce business, you need an e-commerce marketing platform that works just as hard as you do. That means you need Klaviyo. With Klaviyo, you'll delight customers and drive revenue at the same time. With personalized email and SMS marketing campaigns, you can design and send in minutes. For more, visit klaviyo.com/uncensored. That's KLAVIYO.com/uncensored.